Most memorable boxing statistics. Behind boxing's potential risks are countless impressive records and accomplishments gathered over the years. For example, the American boxer Mike Tyson was hailed as the heavyweight champion at 20 years old, making him the youngest heavyweight champion ever. Here are some of the most exciting boxing stats and facts worth exploring. Floyd Mayweather's match recorded the highest boxing pay-per-view numbers at 4.6 million buys. Floyd Mayweather's match against Manny Pacquiao in 2015 broke the PPV record with 4.6 million buys at $100 each, the highest PPV and still the top-earning boxing match revenue ever. Although both boxers were past their prime, people anticipated this match more than any other match due to their impressive win-loss record, which later produced numbers and shattered records. Billy Bird has 138 knockouts, the highest count in boxing history. Boxing undefeated. Billy Bird, active in the 1920s-1940s, has the most knockouts of any boxer in history. Out of the 356 matches he played in his career, he won as many as 138 by knockout. His ability to read his opponent's fighting style from the get-go is greatly attributed to this record. The hardest punchers in boxing history are George Foreman and Ernie Shavers. Ernie Shavers and George Foreman have some of the most impressive boxing punch stats in boxing history. Out of 74 triumphs, Shavers won 68 with knockouts. Even Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers, said Ernie was the hardest puncher he fought. Foreman's won his heavyweight title in fights where he would leave the opponent unable to fight in record time. He had a final career record of 76 wins, with 68 by knockouts. Sugar Ray Robinson's dream about killing his opponent in a match came true. In 1947, the night before his fight with Jimmy Doyle, Sugar Ray Robinson had a dream in which he killed his opponent during the fight. What happened next was one of the strangest stories in boxing history. Robinson's dream came true as his opponent lost consciousness during the fight and never woke up. The fastest knockout in boxing history took 4 seconds. The fastest knockout ever took only 4 seconds. It happened on November 4, 1947, when Mike Collins performed the best and quickest KO in boxing history against Pat Brownson during the Golden Gloves tournament in Minneapolis, Minnesota. History says that Collins had changed his strategy to a southpaw posture upon entering the ring, which confused Brownson, and he took the win in a blink of an eye. The longest fight in boxing history lasted for over 7 hours. The 1893 Jack Burke and Andy Bowen fight was the longest boxing match recorded, lasting for 7 hours and 19 minutes in 110 rounds. "It's not over until someone says it's over," was what used to be the rule in boxing back then, as both fighters refused to give up. The referee decided on a draw between the two fighters and split the win. Boxing is becoming more popular in the U.S., with 6.7 million people reportedly participating. 2021 saw 6.7 million people in the U.S. participate in boxing, opening many opportunities for some industries to expand, eventually increasing boxing's share in the global sports revenue. The market size behind boxing gyms and clubs reached $1.2 billion in 2022. The boxing industry promotions value reached $440 million. By 2023, the number of businesses in the boxing gym and club industry has increased by 1.4% from 2022. The highest bet on a match in boxing history was worth over $200,000, £150,000. Mayweather vs. Pacquiao set boxing records for PPV revenue and viewership. Moreover, pundits wagered the largest single bet on a boxing match on this fight. The bookmaker was William Hill, and the bettor was a man over 80 from Northern Ireland. This man dropped over $200,000 wager at 1-2 odds. The wagerer's intuition was correct because Mayweather won that night, making them much richer. 90% of boxers suffer from brain injury during their career. Stats indicate that boxing carries major health risks. Boxers often receive direct punches in the face, causing eye injuries. Boxing injury statistics also show that boxers often sustain cuts, bruises, tooth damage, broken ribs, internal bleeding. Since they are exposed to hits to the head, boxers are likely to suffer from Parkinson's or Alzheimer's disease later in life. Boxing is an excellent exercise for overall health. Aside from improving one's cardiovascular health, boxing also enhances stamina and hand-eye coordination. Other benefits include better sleep quality and an increase in self-confidence and morale. The history of boxing in America started after World War I. The American Expeditionary Forces did a lot of boxing for entertainment and training in their camps in France. General John Pershing praised the sport's benefits for young men. When those who had undergone military training programs returned to college campuses, intercollegiate boxing was introduced into higher education. In the early 20th century, New York State legalized boxing. Boxing saw its golden era in the USA from the 1960s to 1970s and has become one of the most popular sports in the world. The rise of television brought some of the biggest fights in boxing history. Boxing's popularity soared when television came. The first televised boxing match, aired on BBC TV, was between middleweights Archie Sexton and Laurie Radery at the Broadcasting House in London on August 22, 1933. Boxing matches eventually started being distributed through the pay-per-view (PPV) service. The heavyweight match between Evander Holyfield and George Foreman was the first boxing match aired by HBO pay-per-view on April 19, 1991. Women's boxing was introduced as an Olympic sport in London in 2012. Although women's boxing has existed since at least the early 18th century, it was added to the Olympics for the first time in 2012. That year, the first Olympic gold medal in women's boxing went to Nicola Adams from the UK. Boxing first became an Olympic event in Greece in 688 BCE. Fighters wore leather bands called hemants around their hands, wrists, and sometimes breasts for protection. They wore nothing to protect their heads or faces. Boxing was a popular spectator sport in the ancient Roman Empire. The savagery of boxing sport in the ancient Roman Empire did not stop people from all classes to watch and enjoy. Even Augustus, the first emperor of ancient Rome, was an avid fan of the sport and enjoyed watching matches between Roman and Greek boxers. However, around 400 CE, Emperor Theodoric the Great completely banned the sport due to its brutality. Boxing returned later to the sports scene in 1681 when a formal fight was recorded in Britain and became popular in the UK starting 1698. The first code of rules in the history of boxing was written in 1743. The first official code of rules was developed in 1743 by Jack Broughton, recognized as the father of boxing. Broughton's rules, with minor changes, were used in boxing until 1838 when it was replaced by the more detailed London prize ring rules. The Queensberry rules, drafted by a boxer named John Graham Chambers in 1857, later replaced the London prize ring rules. The earliest appearance of boxing was in the 3rd millennium BCE. The earliest known visual portrayal of boxing comes from relief carvings created in the 3rd millennium BCE by the ancient Sumerians. A carved jar from Minoan, Crete in 1500 BCE is the first thing that shows that boxers wore gloves. It shows helmeted boxers with stiff plates on their hands. The earliest sign of rules in boxing history comes from ancient Greece. Ancient boxing had no rounds or referees. The match continued until one of the players held up a finger to signal defeat or until one of the opponents could no longer fight. It also had no weight divisions and clinching. Since there were no rules, ancient boxing caused injuries, disfigurement, and sometimes death. Boxing gloves could cause more harm than bare-knuckle boxing. BYB Extreme's president Mike Vasquez claims boxing gloves could cause more long-term damage than bare-knuckle punches. Considering the material used in making the gloves, Vasquez says that boxing gloves protect a fighter's hands but not the person receiving the punch. The number of rounds in boxing is capped at 12 maximum. The maximum number of rounds in a boxing match is 12, and the entire round lasts 3 minutes. This applies to World Championships, Olympics, and Commonwealth Games, too. The boxing punch number system includes 6 moves. Straight to boxing. There are 6 basic punches in boxing which are organized by numbers. Here as follows. Jab equals 1. Straight cross equals 2. Lead hook equals 3. Rear hook equals 4. Lead uppercut equals 5. Rear uppercut equals 6. Trainers and boxers can strategize in creating the best combos based on this guide.